much better. Thank you so much. Welcome to Homosassa Springs Wildlife State Park. My name is Gary. I'm here today to share a little information with you about the park, and then we'll tell you a whole lot about manatees. But first, I want to thank everybody for coming to the park today. Without your attendance, we couldn't have parks like this throughout the state, so we certainly appreciate you being here. I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes, may run over a little bit, but when I finish my talk, I'm going to go to that platform there behind me, and I have 3 manatees over there under my care. I'm going to feed them right after my talk. You're welcome to come and watch the feeding. You don't have to be in a hurry. It takes me over 20 minutes from the time I start till I finish the meal. You stand up on the top rail, look straight down there. I'm going to feed in that square that's floating in the water there. Or you can go downstairs. It's all glass windows. You can watch them eat underwater. I suggest you do a little bit of both. So first I'd like to tell you just a little bit about this park. This place is right at 200 acres. It's one of 175 state parks here in Florida. This place being very unique, it's the only park in the whole system with a wildlife program. This acreage here became popular back in the early 1940s because of the warm water spring here behind me. By the 1960s, this acreage was full of exotic animals from all over the world and operated as a regular zoo. We changed ownership several times over the years and last sold to the Florida Parks Department in 1989. Well, they didn't want to operate this as a regular zoo, so they sold off almost all the exotic animals. But what the state wanted with this acreage was to have a place to bring in animals found here in Florida in the wild that were sick, injured, or orphaned. And after taking those animals through rehabilitation, if it was then determined some of those animals could not survive in the wild on their own, there'd be a place for those animals to go. This is that place. So all the animals in here all have a story to tell. They'll act as ambassadors to their species for nice folks like you to come enjoy this beautiful park and see some animals you probably wouldn't see on a daily basis. And again, thanks to nice people like you, allows us the opportunity to not only give these animals a home, but to give them a life they otherwise wouldn't have had. So we certainly appreciate you coming by to visit with us. So now I'll tell you a little about manatees. Here in this park, we rehabilitate several manatees throughout the year, come to us either sick or injured. Right now, we only have 3 manatees under our care. If you'd been here a couple of months ago, we had 5. But over a period of time, some of those manatees come to us either sick or injured. With enough time, they get well, they get better, we get to release those back out in the wild. Of the 3 manatees we have, 2 of them will never be released from this park. They were born here in this park many, many years ago. They've never been outside the park. They do not know how to survive in the wild on their own. They're going to have to stay with us the rest of their life. The oldest one, her name's Ariel. Last Christmas Day was her birthday. She turned 52 years old.
Wow.
Her half-sister Betsy's also in here. Last October she turned 34 years old. Now these are 2 very large, very heavy manatees. In the wild, most manatees weigh about 1,000 pounds. Some will get to 12 or 1,300 pounds. We weighed these manatees last month. Our manatee, Betsy, weighs 2,400 pounds.
Wow, she's getting well fed.
Her half-sister, Elle, weighs 2,200 pounds.
Wow.
So these 2 are large and in charge. The third manatee we have here in our care came to us from a boat injury. That's where we get most of our rehab. But this one got hit in the side with the bow of the boat, which cracked a rib and bruised a lung. But right now she can't take a full deep breath of air. She can't stay underwater as long as she needs to. So it's kind of iffy right now if whether she's ever going to get better to be able to be released. Kind of a funny backstory on her. She came to us from the Tampa Zoo, where they take a lot of sick and injured manatees for evaluation, see what's wrong with them, what needs to be done. And sometimes they're down there for a couple of months till they're stabilized, and then they send them to places like this to finish the rehab. So they brought her here to this park. They unloaded her from the truck. And I asked him, what's her name? I said, oh yeah, her name is Heinz. I said, what? He said, her name is Heinz. I said, who names these things anyway? And then they handed me her paperwork. I looked down the bottom of the page, and it told how many manatees had come into Tampa Zoo so far that year, and she was number 57.
Oh my goodness.
So she's Heinz 57. So, okay, now I understand her name. So when we feed the manatees here in the park, we feed them 4 times a day. We feed at 7:30, 11:30, 1:30, and 3:30. So 7:30 this morning, the three manatees got fed 120 pounds of romaine lettuce.
Whoa.
At 11:30, I fed them 80 pounds of lettuce. Here at 1:30, I'm going to feed them another 80 pounds of lettuce. At 3:30, I'm going to feed them another 120 pounds of lettuce. So if you lost that math, that's 400 pounds of lettuce for three manatees every day. That's a lot of lettuce. So I don't know when the last time you went to the store to buy romaine lettuce. It's a little pricey. I was in the store last week. I walked past the romaine lettuce. One stalk was almost $3. Each manatee here in the park eats over 80 of those every day. So thanks for coming to the park today to help pay the feed bill. And contrary to what you've been led to believe your entire life, that if you eat lots of lettuce and other greens, you'll be slim and trim. That didn't work for the manatees. In the wild, manatees will eat any type of aquatic vegetation. They're strictly herbivores, not interested in fish or crabs. They're looking for aquatic plant life. So they eat a lot of seagrass, 7 different varieties of seagrass. They eat water lilies. They eat the algae off the pier posts. But mostly around here they eat eelgrass. Eelgrass is a wide-bladed grass. It was a little over a foot tall and less than 10 feet of water. And there are thousands and thousands of acres of it, all up and down the coastline and all in these intercoastal waters. So when a manatee eats, this is the lower jawbone of a manatee. You can see she has no front teeth. They just have these rough bars top and bottom, which allow her to break the grass off. And then she takes it to the back of her mouth and chews that grass up with molars. These molars look almost exactly like the molars you and I have, except these are referred to as marching molars. They're called marching molars because these teeth are always on the move. So I'll pass this around. You can see there's a little tiny molar growing here in the very back. As it grows and gets bigger, it pushes the rest of these teeth forward. This front tooth is going to pop out, and then it's going to grow another molar in the back. Mother Nature's done this for the manatee when she's eating. Most of the time she's close to the bottom of the water, and as she eats, she pulls up a little sand and silt along with that grass, and that grit over time starts to wear her teeth out. So in a manatee's lifetime, barring sickness or injuries, they can live about 60 years. Manatee will replace all the teeth in her head 7 or 8 times over. We all wish we could do that. So as I pass this around, see how pristine these back molars are until you get about the 4th one from the front. You see where it's starting to flatten out from all that grit. It started here in the back. Over time, working its way up to number 4. The 3rd one's even worse. 2nd one more than that. This front tooth right now is absolutely useless. It wouldn't be long before that tooth popped out and that rotation started all over again. Don't pass that around for me, please. Now I'd like to ask you folks a couple of questions. This first one's pretty easy. Can somebody here tell me a nickname for a manatee, something we usually call?
Cow.
Sorry?
Cow.
Sea cows, yeah. They're called sea cows because of the way they eat. They'll glide very slowly across these thousands of acres of grasslands. Reach down, chomp, moving on, chomp, moving on, chomp. Just like a cow does in the pasture. Now a little harder question. Anybody here know the closest living relative to a manatee? Any guesses? We're close. The closest living relative to a manatee is an elephant. They don't look a whole lot alike, they do share a few similarities. The blood work and the DNA is extremely close. An elephant also has marching molars. There's always a tooth growing back in its head because of the roughage it eats. If you can see the front flippers on a manatee, she has 3 or 4 fingernails at the end of her flipper. They look exactly like the toenails on an elephant. Now one similarity they have you wouldn't think about is how an elephant eats. An elephant reaches out with his trunk to pick food up and bring it up his mouth. It's called a prehensile muscle. So if you think about an elephant's face, it has this lower lip, hangs down like this. The trunk comes over the top of it. The trunk is actually the upper lip. It just happens to have a nose at the end of it. A manatee is a little bit the same way on a smaller scale. Her upper lip is prehensile. She cannot eat without that upper lip. If she's feeding off the bottom, the whole time she's eating, that lip is going like this to pull that grass into her mouth so she can break it off. When I feed the manatees up here in just a few minutes, I'm gonna throw whole heads of lettuce in the water. They're gonna come up and ready to grab it with that lip, take it just below the surface, but they have to use that lip to keep inching that lettuce farther and farther back in their mouth where the bowls are to chew it up. Kind of, you don't get to see that real well if you go and watch the feed. So, in the wild, most of the manatees right now have left the area. If you come here in the wintertime, we're loaded up with manatees. The manatees have to have warm water. So in the summertime, most of them go on migration. Usually by the first week of April, 95% of all the manatees that spent the winter in Florida have left. And in the winter, there's about 6,000 manatees will be in Florida in the wintertime. Usually by the first week of April, 95% of them, like if they spent the winter here, they'll go from here 9 miles to the Gulf, make a right-hand turn going up the coastline, go across the state of Georgia, Alabama, and some of them go as far as Mississippi. But by the time they get there, it's time to turn around and come back, because they have to be back here by the 1st of December. Now they have to come back because there's very little fat on a manatee. Even as big as the ones we have, won't have about an inch, maybe inch and a half of fat anywhere on our entire body. Their size is because their internal organs are massive. A mature manatee's lungs will be almost 4 feet long over the tremendous amount of air. Their stomach almost the size of a soccer ball, and their intestines, where your intestines and mine are about 18 feet long. A manatee's intestines are 150 feet long. So it takes a pretty good sized body to handle all that. So like I say, in the wild, anytime there's aquatic vegetation, there's always enough grass around it. 99% of the places they go to. Occasionally we'll have some trouble with the pollution or whatever disrupts that. A lot of times the state will step in and try to help those manatees out. So if you want to see lots and lots of manatees, come to Florida in January, February, March, and try to find the coldest day you can. Last March we had temperatures here in this park about 30 degrees. There's almost 300 manatees right here in this short stretch of river here behind me. They come in here because they have to have warm water. Behind me is one of the largest warm water springs in the state. If you look out over the water there, over to your right just a little bit, you see the bottom of that water is a light green color. That water right there is just a little over waist deep, maybe hits you about mid-chest. Then behind me is this real dark green circle. That's the warm water spring. It's just a giant hole in the water. It drops off to almost 40 feet deep. Then it has 3 large vents that go out and way down and cover 270 square miles here spread out, and goes deep enough that the thermal heat of the earth warms this water up. So the spring here behind me puts out 2 million gallons of water an hour at a temperature of 74 degrees every day, never changes. So a lady told me the other day, said, that can't be 2 million gallons of water an hour. You don't see the water moving. She's wanting to see it boil, water moving. I told her if that giant hole were smaller, that back there would look like Old Faithful shooting up there. It's a large volume of water, but it's coming out of a very large hole. So you can look it up on the internet, and it'll tell you the same thing. This is a very important spring for the state. So the state of Florida comes in about every 4 months. They run electronic equipment across the river here in front of the spring to measure how much water is going by, the temperature and clarity. They were here 3 months ago. That day was a little over 2 million gallons of water an hour. The temperature was, as always, 74 degrees, and the water was a little off clear because we've had some rains in the area, and this water is also affected by the tides, so high tide was coming in to cloud the water up just a little bit. So in the wild, manatees have no natural predators. Alligators don't bother them. Sharks very rarely ever bother them. With that being said, 3 years ago down in Miami, they did find a manatee down there in the bay, had some kind of bite marks on her front flipper. So they sent a rescue team out to pick it up. It was a shark bite. It was very superficial. We kept it for 3 or 4 weeks, gave her some antibiotics, and sent her back out. They don't think that shark was actually attacking that manatee. They think it was just curious. Just went up there and did a quick snap, and no, I don't want none of that. So that pretty much tells me that manatees don't taste like chicken, because the alligator and the sharks pretty much leave them alone. The only thing detrimental happening to a manatee is all caused by man. And mankind's been extremely rough on the manatee population for several years. Boat strikes are the most prevalent. Over 65% of the manatees in the wild right now have scars on their back from boat propellers.
Wow,
And I understand some of that's unavoidable. If you had a cloudy day, maybe wind blowing a little bit, water's got a little chop to it, manatees were underneath the surface, they're extremely hard to see. But most of those incidents happen on sunshiny days, the water's like glass, the boat people are not paying any attention to the speed zones that are set in place in manatee areas. They don't put anybody in front of the boat to even look for manatees. Most of those incidents are definitely avoidable if people just pay attention. Trash in the water is another big problem we have here in the wintertime. The more manatees we have in the water, the more boats we have watching those manatees. Some of those boats got a cooler on board. They got a plastic bag of ice came into that cooler. If that plastic bag or anything like it, like a fishing line or anything, gets out of the boat in the water, manatees will come on and eat it. They can't digest it. It gets down their intestines, blocks everything, they quit eating. If we don't find that manatee soon enough, we just lost another manatee. There's always something going on caused by man, detrimental to the manatees, that we need to be aware of and keep an eye on, because if we don't, there won't be manatees in the wild. They'll all be in captivity, and that'd be a shame. So I'm kind of running out of time here. I need to get over and feed my girls. I'm going to ask you folks a favor. I know some of you here have at least a little bit of an interest in manatees who would be here. And I also know you have access to a computer. So my favor is, when you get a chance, go to your home computer, go up to the top search bar, type in the word manatee. When you click on that, it's going to be several websites that are extremely interesting. Very, very educational, especially if you got kids and grandkids. But it doesn't hurt us older folks to learn something new. One of those websites is called Save the Manatee Club. That's a very large organization here in Florida. They're all over the state trying to educate people what's going on with the manatees, how you can help if you so desire. They help us pick manatees up and bring them in when they're sick or injured. They help us take manatees back. It's a fantastic organization. Some of you here are old enough, you might remember the founder of Save the Manatee Club was Jimmy Buffett from Margaritaville. He was a great proponent of manatees, spent tens of thousands of his own dollars trying to educate people in countless number of hours. So look manatees up on the internet, you'll be glad you did. I promise it's more entertaining and more educational than if you're sitting in your recliner chair watching TV, because
yes.
we all know how bad that is. Take a few minutes out of your time, look about it. So if you folks have enjoyed your day here in the park, when you get back home, be sure and tell your friends about it. While you're at it, tell your neighbors. Heck, I don't care. Tell people you don't even like. Send them here to the park, and I'll make friends with all of them. You folks enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you so much for coming by and visiting us. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Guys, you came in late. I'm getting ready to go to that platform here behind me. I have 3 manatees over there. I'm getting ready to feed